Amidst the chaos of a busy tourist day at the royal palace, a dedicated royal guard found himself surrounded by an unusually rude group of visitors. Tempers flared, and tension hung in the air as the tourists refused to heed his commands. Just when it seemed a clash was inevitable, the guard did something that left everyone stunned and questioning. He unexpectedly broke protocol. James had always thought it to be an honor to be part of the royal guard. However, now, with the people around him, he knew he was not suited for the job. He knew that someone of his function was not allowed to do anything to even the rowdiest of tourists. No speaking, no moving. But James had enough. A rude group of visitors had been hanging around him for far too long. Though he was used to people taking pictures of him, these people were taking it to new heights. He knew what he had to do, as he couldn't let these people continue on with their behavior, even if it could, and most likely would, cost him his job. With the tourist annoying him to no end, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, as James snapped, breaking protocol and shocking everyone near him. But how had James broken protocol? What would happen to him next? And most importantly to James, would the rude group of tourists be dealt with? James had wanted to be part of the royal guard ever since he was a little boy. His mother would oftentimes take him to see them. It would always be the highlight of his day, as he would stand perfectly still next to the men. However, as he grew older, he knew that he wouldn't only be standing next to the guards, but stand as one of them. James had met every requirement with flying colors. Upon his employment, his mother, who had seen him work to realize his dream, had to wipe away a tear when she saw her son in his uniform for the first time. She had been so proud of him that she would visit James almost every day for his first week on duty, showing him her support. It had made him so incredibly happy to see her there. It had taken him every part of his willpower not to smile into the camera. During his first briefing, he remembered that his sergeant had told him that posing or laughing when a picture was being taken was strictly prohibited. Then it had been fine. He had no idea in what manner those rules would get him in trouble. However, it had been multiple months since he first got employed. Sure, tourists had been annoying. Some tried everything to make a royal guard lose composure. James thought he had seen it all. People telling them corny jokes, walking in their path, making loud or strange sounds. Nevertheless, James felt like nothing would ever make him or his colleagues lose composure. He had no clue how wrong he was. He was halfway through his 2-hour shift when the sun started to set. The tourists started to gather even more, needing to take their photo with one of them before the light escaped them. They would circle around the guards, snapping pictures and imitating their poses. It was nothing like he hadn't seen before, but this time he saw a rowdy bunch coming into view from the corner of his eye. Though ever vigilant, James wouldn't let that distract him. They were most likely just some boisterous group who were trying to get a reaction. Instead, his eyes went back to the visitors closer to him. Though James knew that he couldn't pay the children any mind, his heart warmed at seeing them imitating the march of the guard. It reminded him so much of himself when he was younger. It had been the pointing and the loudness of them that made James fully focus on the group. They weren't like most tourists, James observed. There was something off about them. He could feel it in his bones. How his neck hairs were standing up straight. He was standing still, eyes ahead, though slightly obscured by his hat, yet he could clearly see them in his peripheral vision. James knew this couldn't be good. The young men with cameras swung around their necks and flashy outfits walked straight toward him and his fellow guards. First, to the one to his right. Though James couldn't look, he could hear the ruckus coming from his right. It wasn't long before he heard his fellow soldier yell, "Do not touch the king's guard!" James looked slightly to the side but couldn't believe what he was seeing. It seemed as if the men were trying to find out how far they could go. It flabbergasted James. Did they not know that the royal guards were real soldiers, trained for war, and not simply standing around as gimmicks? He and his fellow soldiers were there to protect the monarch and the palace that they resided in. However, looking at the men's actions, James feared that those men might go too far with their shenanigans. His colleague clutched his weapon, keeping his composure as the men were too close to comfort. James knew that he had to step in if the gentleman went too far. Nevertheless, it seemed as if his fellow guardsman, William, had other plans. Instead of going into action, he made another shout. "Make way for the King's Guard," William said as he started to march forward. With the warning hanging in the air and William already moving, he shoved himself through the group of men, two of them stumbling backward. It had been something they had been trained for. Though they had to give a warning, the Royal Guard would nearly walk through people who were in their direct path. William had done precisely that without staggering, and James couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. James kept the emotion off his face, just like William had done. The only thing on the two men's faces was stoicism. The group of men was helping up one of their friends who had lost their balance and fallen to the ground. James could see their annoyed glances and swore he saw spit flying from one of their mouths. James hoped that they learned their lesson, but instead, the men set their sights on him. Their leader, a man with dark sunglasses, swaggered up to James. He had this arrogant grin that stretched from ear to ear. The air grew tense as he locked eyes with James, and the man, without breaking eye contact, raised his camera and snapped a picture, the flash momentarily blinding James. Because of his sudden partial blindness, James had almost not seen it coming. The man had the audacity to reach out for James, not merely to touch him, but to snatch off James's iconic bearskin hat. However, regardless of his partial blindness, James's reflexes had him tilting his head just slightly to keep his hat out of the man's reach. "Do not touch the King's Guard," James said to the man, raising his voice. Instead of listening, as most people would, this man didn't get deterred by the statement, but instead stepped closer. The man was now truly in James's personal space, his face barely inches away from James's own. "Smile for the camera," the man taunted, a wolf-like grin on his face. James's mind raced. His duty was to remain still, unresponsive. However, this seemed not like an ordinary tourist prank. It felt far more personal and aggressive. He knew he had to do something before it all escalated. He thought to copy William by marching. It was the one thing they could do regarding annoying tourists, or if they felt the need to move. "Make way for the King's Guard!" James exclaimed. He straightened himself, his bayonet firmly clutched into his hands. He would walk past this man, and that would be all. As soon as he would walk, this weird power play would be over. James had never expected this to happen. When James started to march, the man had braced himself, slamming into James, but instead of staggering, held his ground. Though this annoyed James to no end, it hadn't been the reason as to why he had been set off. It had been what the man had said that had infuriated him enough to forget reason and for him to break protocol. What he did next made everybody gasp in surprise. The air thickened, laden with tension. James's heart raced, pounding in his ears as the significance of his actions unfolded before him. Cameras snapped urgently, capturing a moment that would surely become infamous. An eerie quietness replaced the uproarious energy of just seconds ago. You could hear a pin drop amidst thousands, a testament to the sheer magnitude of James's action. But then, like a distant wave approaching, whispers began to sweep the crowd. Time seemed to stretch endlessly for James. With every second that passed, he felt an increasing tightness in his chest, a vivid reminder of the gravity of his decision. He was stuck, fully aware of the impending consequences. Each camera click echoed in James's mind, serving as a harsh reminder of the permanent nature of his misstep. The bright flashes blinded him momentarily, intensifying the sinking feeling in his gut. He knew, deep down, that this could signal the end of everything he had worked for. Was it worth it? James silently tormented himself, ruminating on the events that had transpired. The emotional cocktail of anger, pride, and fear brewed inside him, as he wondered if a fleeting moment of rage would cost him his lifelong passion. The uncertainty of his future weighed heavily on him. As chaos loomed, Corporal Stevens' trained instincts kicked in. He moved with calculated precision, inserting himself between James and the disruptive tourists. His sharp eyes scanned the scene, ready to defuse the explosive situation. In a voice firm and unwavering, Stephen addressed the crowd. "This is your only warning. Disrupt order again, and you'll regret it." His tone brooked no argument, and the message was clear. He wouldn't tolerate any further provocations. Chastened by Stephen's intervention, the once bold tourists began to retreat. Their bravado diminished, though traces of smug smirks remained. They walked back, casting wary glances over their shoulders, aware of the line they had crossed. Amidst the settling dust, Stephen turned to James, their eyes meeting in silent communication. In Stephen's gaze, there was a mix of concern and understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement of their shared commitment to duty. James nodded in gratitude, feeling an unbreakable bond with his comrade. As the tourists moved away, an officer approached them, relaying a clear message. "Your actions today have consequences. Legal measures are an option if you choose this path again." The tourists gulped, realizing the gravity of their actions, and with one final wary glance, they disappeared from the scene. With each step, the echoes of the day's tumult weighed heavily on James. The once familiar path to the guards' quarters felt longer, each cobblestone a reminder of his actions. The gentle rustle of the evening breeze provided no solace, only emphasizing the loneliness of his reflective journey. Inside the dimly lit quarters, William, a close friend and fellow guard, quickly spotted James's troubled demeanor. Approaching him cautiously, William asked, "What happened out there, mate?" His voice, full of genuine concern, was a balm to James's frayed nerves. Seated on adjacent bunks, James opened up about the confrontation with the tourists. William nodded, sharing a similar experience he had months ago. The room filled with tales of duty and strain, the two guards drawing strength from their shared adversities. Tossing and turning in his bed, James's mind raced, replaying the day's events. The silence of the night was punctuated by his irregular breaths. No matter how he positioned himself, sleep remained elusive, the weight of regret refusing to let him rest. When sleep did finally claim him, it was restless. Dreams of his past emerged, painting a stark contrast to the present. He saw his childhood home, the simple joys of youth, and, most piercingly, his mother's loving gaze, filled with pride and hope. The image of her face juxtaposed against his current turmoil made the night even more unbearable. As dawn broke and James stepped into the fresh morning air, he felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. Whispers danced on the wind, each utterance carrying the tale of the previous day's events. The once familiar faces of his colleagues now held a mix of concern, pity, and judgment. "Have you seen it?" William rushed over, holding out his phone. On the screen, the familiar scene from the previous day played out. Shock gripped James as he saw the view count. Millions had watched his moment of weakness, his indiscretion playing on a loop for the world to see. Comments flooded in from every corner of the globe. "James is a hero," proclaimed one user, while another argued, "This isn't the behavior we expect from the Royal Guard." The digital realm was split, with many standing in support of James's human reaction and others decrying the breach of tradition. Online platforms became battlefields of opinion. Hashtags like #StandWithJames trended alongside #DismissTheGuard. Everyone, it seemed, had an opinion, and the story grew larger, the narrative evolving with each share, each like, and each comment. Within the hallowed halls of power, the incident was not taken lightly. Senior officials held emergency meetings, debating the impact on the Royal Guard's image. The centuries-old institution's integrity was now in the limelight, and every decision would be scrutinized by a world that was watching closely. The official notice arrived, its pristine envelope and formal script chilling James to his core. He was to present himself before a board of senior officers for a thorough review of the incident. Each step he took towards the chamber echoed with the gravity of what was at stake. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Some officers, their faces hardened by years of service, looked upon James with discerning eyes, their reservations clear. However, others nodded subtly, offering silent gestures of support, acknowledging the challenge of upholding tradition in the face of raw emotion. One by one, fellow guards took the stand. William spoke of the day's challenges, emphasizing the taunts they routinely faced. Stephen, ever the voice of reason, detailed the events leading up to the incident, painting a vivid picture of the provocations that had pushed James to his limit. A large screen lit up the room, the viral video playing for all to see. The silence was palpable, save for the occasional murmur of recognition or surprise. Alongside it, other clips showed numerous instances where guards had been taunted, adding context to the challenges they faced daily. Hours turned into days as the panel deliberated. They were caught between the traditions that had defined them for centuries and the undeniable humanity showcased in the incident. Each member grappled with their own beliefs and values, seeking a resolution that would do justice to both James and the Royal Guard's legacy. The online community began to buzz with whispers, each more scandalous than the last. A digital detective, known only by their online moniker, unveiled the identity of the man who had clashed with James. It turned out he was no ordinary tourist, but a serial provocateur with a slew of controversies under his belt. Articles and videos surfaced, each documenting the troll's many exploits across the globe. There he was, disrupting a solemn event in France. In another, he was mocking traditional performers in Japan. Each incident was carefully orchestrated for maximum chaos, with the troll laughing at the center of it all. As more of his antics were exposed, a pattern began to crystallize. The troll thrived on conflict, creating disturbances tailored to the sensitivities of each region. His modus operandi was unmistakable: incite, film, and revel in the viral aftermath. Speculation ran wild. Had the troll chosen James as a specific target? Was it the uniform, or perhaps a particular detail from James's past? It seemed the troll had an uncanny knack for selecting the perfect victim to ensure his videos received maximum traction. Armed with this new perspective, the panel reconvened. They pored over the troll's documented antics, weighing them against James's momentary lapse. The realization dawned that perhaps this wasn't just about one guard's mistake, but a premeditated act designed to exploit and humiliate for the world to see. As James sat alone, the room's atmosphere was thick with tension. The door opened, revealing an officer with a somber expression. Clearing his throat, the officer relayed the decision of the panel, a temporary suspension. The words hit James like a sledgehammer, echoing painfully in his ears. Staring blankly at the wall of his room, James felt the weight of shattered dreams. He had aspired to be a royal guard since childhood, picturing himself proudly standing watch. Was it all over because of a single brief moment of human emotion? He grappled with the possibility that years of dedication had been negated. Tears blurred his vision as James dialed a familiar number. The voice on the other end, filled with warmth and concern, was his mother's. Pouring out his heart, he tried to articulate the depth of his pain and disappointment. She listened patiently, her own heart aching for her son. "Remember," she began, "all those evenings we'd talk about your dreams? The pride I felt watching you march for the first time?" James nodded, the memories flooding back. His mother continued, "You are more than this one incident. Your dedication, love, and commitment to your duty define you." They talked for hours, reliving old moments and laughing at fond memories. The unconditional support of his mother was the salve James needed. Together, they faced the uncertainty, drawing strength from their unbreakable bond, hopeful that truth and justice would ultimately prevail. Across social media platforms, news of James's suspension became the topic of fervent discussion. Supportive hashtags began trending, and an online petition for James's reinstatement quickly amassed thousands of signatures. The streets near the palace saw spontaneous gatherings, with placards in hand, of citizens chanting their support for the young guard. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected twist arose. An elderly lady, Mrs. Atkins, approached the media with previously unseen footage. With shaking hands, she offered a video shot from her old smartphone, explaining, "I thought it might shed some light." The video was from a vantage point that had captured the entire scene. When the video played, it unmistakably showed the troll leaning into James, his lips whispering words that were lip-read by experts. The conclusion was unanimous. He had spewed a deeply personal and derogatory comment about James's mother. The revelation added depth to James's reaction, painting it in a much more sympathetic light. As the new video circulated, public opinion shifted even more firmly in James's favor. Social media was abuzz with messages of empathy and outrage against the troll. Vigils were held in honor of James's dedication and in protest of his unjust treatment, illuminating the night with candles and heartfelt chants. The panel, once confident in their decision, now faced mounting pressure. News outlets questioned their judgment, and legal experts weighed in on the potential impact of the new evidence. The Royal Guard's leadership found themselves at a crossroads, caught between upholding protocol and acknowledging the nuances of a guard's challenging duty. Enhanced audio from Mrs. Atkins's video revealed more than just whispered words. As the troll's cruel words about James's mother reached James's ears, the guard's immediate reaction was to draw his weapon, leading to an unintentional nick on the troll's arm. The injury, though minor, had been the climax of the incident, a moment that Mrs. Atkins's video captured in its raw, emotional intensity. Convening once again, the panel now had a clearer understanding of the extreme provocation that James had faced. What had once been seen as an unprovoked escalation now appeared as a deeply personal and instinctual reaction to a vile comment. Many within the Royal Guard privately confided that they might have done the same if placed in James's shoes. Cornered by the overwhelming evidence against him and facing mounting public scorn, the troll made a desperate move. A shaky video appeared online where he, with visible fear in his eyes, admitted to his past actions and the calculated insult aimed at James. The world watched as he expressed remorse, although many questioned its authenticity. Not stopping at just an apology, the troll went further. He clarified that James's reaction had indeed been a result of his vile provocation, and that the guard had acted in a manner that seemed purely defensive. This revelation spread like wildfire, shifting public sentiment even further in James's favor. The combination of the new video evidence, the troll's confession, and the outpouring of public support made the panel's decision all the more challenging. Inside sources hinted at intense debates within the committee's chambers. Yet, there was a palpable feeling in the air, a hope shared by many that James might soon don his uniform once again.